The auditor would just acknowledge. The auditor would never evaluate.
Okay.
And the auditor would also never invalidate, never say, well, no, that's not why. You're really like that because
Okay.
that kind of thing would never happen.
Okay. That's very good. Thanks for clearing that up for me. Let's see. I've got.
And there's one other thing. See, the attitude of the auditor is one that you are the spiritual being, and they're just trying to guide you to be who you are. You're not your body, and you're not your mind.
You're something in between.
There's a great deal of respect for the spiritual being, and is treated with dignity.
I see. Yeah. And that is acknowledged very strong. That seems to be a theme that is very put home. Like it's constantly brought up, reminding the patient or the person being audited of that they are in a position of respect, that they are not maybe necessarily being treated by. I'm sure that there's lots of people who've had really bad experiences with the psychiatric system, that they feel like they're just being put through the production line. And it's very important for the auditor to make them feel, to have compassion for them.
Yeah.
I see.
Absolutely. And to maintain that the person, can overcome their problems and not rely on any crutches, not that drugs actually, dullen the mind. They decrease awareness. With auditing, you want to increase the person's awareness. You want the person to wake up, so you don't want to dull or numb or interfere with the Satan and what he's actually experiencing. Emotions are demonstrated by what the person is actually experiencing as a spiritual being. Drugs decrease that. They numb that. They say, well, you shouldn't have grief, or you shouldn't, it's just to numb the pain. And when that wears off, you still have the situation. The Satan, the spiritual being, is experiencing something for a reason. There's some problem, there's some upset, there's something that they're trying to resolve. The idea is to get the Satan, the spiritual being, in the shape where he can handle his problems, where he can address it, so he no longer feels the upset.
So what would your opinion be on something like low serotonin levels that sometimes tend to run in families?
You mean that again?
Low serotonin level, like some families, it's quite common in some families to have depression in the family, and that can often be due to naturally low serotonin levels just carried through the genes in the family. So how would you respond to that?
We don't ascribe to that. There is, obviously, you have a body, and the body does what the body does, right? And, like I said, there's certain physical things. But within families, what happens is, and it's explained in Dianetics, there's a contagion of aberration. For example, the mother birth can be a very painful process. And this is explained in Dianetics, in the book Dianetics, Modern Science of Mental Health. And that mother might say things that are being said in her family and have been said. And she'll repeat that, and then that becomes part of...
You mean like the cycle of abuse?
The baby's reactive mind. And it gets repeated, and the aberration is contagious. Or she might hit the child and say the same thing that was said to her by her mother.
So
it's just an example. It's not... Yeah. Sorry. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, you mean something like the cycle of abuse.
Exactly.
I see. Yeah, that's good. Thanks for explaining that to me. So I was just wondering, there are certain levels of Scientology that certain members, I guess, are not allowed to talk about. Is there a very strict hierarchy in Scientology?
There is let me explain it this way. In Scientology, every person has a certain level of spiritual awareness. You know what I mean? It's like some people are more aware than others. Some people, for example, know themselves very, very well, and they're very successful. They make decisions that they themselves know that that's a right decision for them. Some people are not as aware and make bad decisions, so on and so forth. So everybody's at different levels of spiritual awareness. When you come into Scientology, you're at a certain level, and the idea is you want to get to a higher plane of spiritual awareness, and you do this in a gradient fashion. And it's worked out, it's classified, it's graded in Scientology, and there are auditing processes that are gradual and gradient and take you from one level to the next level to the next level. And then there's also training that's graded, that you can, an auditor at level 0, for example, is at a certain level, and then he's at level 1, and he can deliver certain auditing or, counseling at that level. And that's a very important concept in Scientology, that one can achieve greater and greater spiritual awareness at these various levels.
And these upgrades, they do cost quite a bit of money, though, don't they?
Not necessarily. If you want professional auditing, and let me explain how that works.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to a synagogue or a church or whatever, you might have one minister for 600 people. In Scientology, it's very much a one-on-one religion, so you have a lot more staff, and you have a lot more auditors, and then you have administrative staff to support what needs to occur in an organization. For example, here in Clearwater at the Flag Service Organization, there are about 1,500 staff, and they help the parishioners who come in. So, and we're a young religion.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't been around for centuries and centuries to have acquired and set aside, the wealth that can therefore be used. So we, the parishioners exchange for their auditing or for their training. If you wanted more inexpensive auditing, you can do it from the training route, where you and another person are training up the bridge, and then you would audit each other.
I see.
But Scientology can be the price of a book.
Uh-huh.
And you could get a lot of increase in your awareness and knowledge just through training or reading the Scientology materials. So,
and
dependent on you.
So I've heard there's lots of people that are at level 8 level 7 out of the 8 levels. Is that like Tom Cruise? He's level 7 apparently, right?
Well, if we just he's on that level.
I see.
Now, what does that mean? To the general public out there, it means very little, because unless you understand what the various levels are, you could go, and it would be difficult for me to just explain that. The best way to understand Scientology, like I said, is to read the book or go on the website and get a better, level of understanding of what it is. But I'll just briefly explain. When we talk about Dianetics and the reactive mind,
mm-hmm.
there is a level which is dealt with in the book Dianetics, the Modern Science of Mental Health, which is called clear.
Yes.
And that level, the person no longer has his own reactive mind.
That's when they no longer react, like when they're asked certain questions that they react to on the e-meter, that's when they can be asked these things and go over these situations in their mind, and they no longer react to them. Is that correct?
That's one aspect of it. The main point is that the repressions, the obsessions, the fears, those things that they knew were reactive are no longer a problem. They're no longer obsessed with, whatever they were obsessed with. Maybe it was girls or guys, or maybe it was whatever. But those obsessions, those mental obsessions that they were not in control of, are no longer affecting them. Those repressions that create shyness or nervousness or whatever those reactive computations that they had are no longer there, you
mm-hmm.
see? And the being is now freer to operate because he no longer has that those problems. And then you go into what's called the operating Satan level. So now you're starting to operate as a Satan without the repressions, the obsessions, and the reactive mind.